Hello everyone, I am Dr. Manika Gupta. I am an assistant professor at Department of Geology, University of Delhi. Today we will be discussing about GIS surface model and terrain analysis. Now to start with it, what are the learning objectives here? By the end of this module discussion, you will be able to understand what are the various surface models, how can these models be utilized to derive other variables, or how can they be useful in decision making or hazard mapping or spatial decision making. Thirdly, it would be helpful what are the various surface models which are available to us. So what is terrain analysis or what is terrain mapping? So before we start with terrain analysis, what is a terrain? As soon as we say the word terrain, it implies we are talking about the undulating and the continuous earth surface. Now, mapping of this earth surface has been traditionally performed through surveying. However, there are terrains where it is very difficult to have surveying done, and that is why GIS and the satellite data comes into play. So in today's timing, terrain mapping has been really easy because of presence of the satellite data and the elevation models which help us in plotting these surfaces within the software itself. So what are the different surface models that are used or that can model and plot our digital elevations? What do we imply by digital elevations? Digital elevation is basically we are utilizing the elevation data on the earth's surface and we are digitally plotting it on the computer software. Surface models can be of two types. They can be either the raster data or the vector data. Now the raster data is your digital elevation model and your vector data is your triangulated irregular network, also known as the TIN model. These two models are used to represent our surface data in a form of data which is easily acceptable on a 2D platform in a GIS. These models are actually known as 2.5 dimensionality data because you can actually visualize the data in a form of a 3D data in a 2D spectra. So here the elevation data is not actually taken as the Z coordinate or the third axis. Instead, it is treated as an attribute in the vector data and as a grid cell value in the raster data. As you know the difference between a raster data and the vector data is equally spaced grid cells, while a vector data is either a polygon which has irregular data samples to it. So in a TIN data, it is represented by a point data, while in DEM data, it is represented by a grid cell value. So how do these two models are actually constructed? For a digital elevation model, we can actually use the radar data which gives us the elevation details on the earth's surface. Once we have sampled points, we can interpolate it at regularly grid cells and obtain a raster data. And secondly, for the TIN data, suppose we have a lot of irregularly placed points, then these irregularly placed points are interpolated using a triangulation method wherein these are interpolated and we get a triangulated surface. So how are these two different other than being a raster data and a vector data? These are different because in raster data the elevation value is considered or approximated as the center value of the grid cell. However, in the TIN data the point location is the actual location of that elevation value and it's not assumed to be anywhere else. So that is one of the main things which is different in both of the methods. Second is in your grid cell data or the raster data, since we are assuming it at the center of the grid cell, you cannot have lot of variation from one cell to the other cell. Why do I say that? I say that because we are assuming it at a particular points, we do not have the flexibility of moving the terrain elevations here. So when we do not have the feasibility or the flexibility of moving the elevation points, sometimes when it's a highly variable relief like the Himalayas, then it sometimes doesn't tell you the exact elevation at each of the point cells, and there could be some errors in the calculations. However, in the TEN data, there is a flexibility and it properly points out to the break points or the ridges or the valleys, because it has the flexibility of pointing exactly where the heterogeneous points lie, and it interpolates on the basis of those points itself. However, the raster data is easy to utilize because it's a properly gridded cell data, so it can be easily used for mathematical calculations when we are having some kind of spatial decisions being taken. Therefore, it depends what is your requirement. If the region where you're working is not highly variable, then you can easily use the digital elevation model instead of using the triangulated irregular network. To show you the difference on the figure, I'll just show you the figure for both the models to make you understand better how these two look or how visualization is different for these two models. So if you will look at these four images, the first two images are highlighting the raster data format. So you can see raster data is as your equally placed grid cells where the elevation data is being represented by these simple points here. These lines here represent your contour lines which are marking your equal elevation data here, and this is your 3D module of the raster data. After this 3D module, you can see the second or the third figure is representing your TIN data. In this TIN data, the points which you see represent your nodes where the elevation data has been collected, and these elevation data which are collected are interpolated for throughout the surface using the triangulation method, wherein we get the triangles connecting at least the 3 points here. You will notice neither of the triangles cross each other, they are separate from each other. The 3D version of this is represented by the fourth figure. You will notice this figure lets you know the direction of the slope, as well as it tells you in which or what is the magnitude of the slope in that direction. So both of the things are representing the same thing, that is your elevation data of the terrain, just the difference being one is your vector data, another is your raster data. So basis of the requirement, you decide whether you have to use a raster data or the vector data. Now the third model is known as the digital surface model. How is it different from the digital elevation model? In digital elevation model, we are just taking the elevation of the terrain itself. We do not consider the elevation of the building itself or the canopy or the trees. However, in the digital surface model, that also is included. So the difference in elevation in both the cases would be the difference due to the structures present at that surface, that may be either your buildings or the canopy forests or anything that. So that is the basic difference between DSM or the digital surface model and the DEM. Now, how can these models be utilized for terrain mapping in a more constructive way, or what information can you derive from these models which are easily available to you in GIS? The first and foremost thing is the contour mapping. Now, contour mapping was initially or traditionally done with the surveying, and you have the contour data available. But with the advent of the GIS, it can automatically give you the contour levels from the DEM data, which is also digitally available to you. So it gives you iso lines of equal elevations. So contour mapping lets you know where the elevation is higher. Like at the streams, it has a curvature there, and you can notice that it's a stream area. Plus, if there is a very slopy area, you will notice a higher elevation contours being formed at equal intervals. Secondly, the contour lines also do not intersect, similarly as the triangles in the triangulated irregular network. Other than the contour mapping, we can use the same data for vertical profiling. Now, what is vertical profiling? Suppose you have a stream in the hilly areas, you can easily map the slope gradient using the elevation data, and you can have a vertical profile of the elevation in that area. So that is useful when you want to know how much is the difference in the slope or what is the gradient between the stream data from the upstream to the downstream. And this is also helpful when you are calculating the discharge or estimating how much of the runoff is happening in the upslope areas. The third feature which is important in terrain mapping is hill shading. Now, how does hill shading helps us? It's kind of a 3D visualization of your raster data as I showed you in the first figure, but with the hill shading you are actually able to see which side is illuminated on the basis of the sun angle and the azimuth direction. So if you provide the actual sun angle at the time the DEM was taken, you can have a proper understanding where is the shadow effect happening and where is actually a illuminated side of the relief. So it kind of gives you proper illumination at the hilly areas or the mountainous regions, and it's a helpful technique when you want to use it with other like rainfall intensity understanding or rainfall precipitation distribution understanding. So the hill shading actually calculates the relative radiance based on this particular equation where RF is equal to cos AF minus AS into sin HF into cos HS plus cos HF and sin HS. So this is the equation which is utilized for mapping the radiance of the hill aspect. So here what is cos AF? AF is your actually the aspect of the map, AS is your sun azimuth, HF is your slope and HS is your sun altitude. So in this hill shade mapping you get the slope, aspect, sun azimuth and your sun illumination angle. So once you have these you get the RF values here. So the hill shading or the relief map actually calculates this RF value which is plotted for every pixel and is calculated for every pixel based on the calculated slope and aspect and the sun illumination angle. That is how you can use the relief data. The fourth and the last is your hypsometric tinting. What is hypsometric tinting? It helps in visualization of the progression in hypsometric tinting helps in progression of the elevation data. That's the last of how the terrain mapping can be done. Now in terrain mapping you looked at hill shading or the relief mapping which was done using the DEM models. There you utilize the factors like slope and aspect. Now how can you actually derive this slope and aspect from the raster map? We will try to understand that here. First of all, what is slope and aspect? Slope is the rate of change of elevation from one cell to the another, and aspect is basically your direction of that slope. What do I imply by direction? Actually you must be knowing the direction is either it's from north to south or it's east to west and or any of the other directions we know. So first of all we will see how can we calculate the slope. So if you look at a right angled triangle and you have this A and B and this is your angle, we can calculate slope in two ways. Your first way is calculating it as percentage. So slope will be equal to A upon B into 100. So that is your slope percentage. If you want the slope in degrees, you calculate just in degrees. Your slope would be, the slope in degrees would be equal to tan inverse of A upon B. So these are two simple methods of calculating the slope. Now you would be asking how would this be applied in case of a raster. So we will employ it in a raster. Suppose you have a raster here and raster has equal cells and we need to calculate the raster here, and suppose this point is H9. So this is your H1, H2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and H8. So how do we calculate the slope at this position? A simple equation requires calculating the slope in this direction and in y direction. So this is your x direction and this is your this is your x direction and this is your y direction here. So you calculate the slope in both of these direction here using the finite difference method. So the slope in the x direction would be del hx upon del x, and similarly the slope in the y direction would be sy is equal to del hy upon del y. However, this does not give you the magnitude of the total slope here. So what is the formula for calculating the total slope? It is just an under root of del hx upon del x whole square plus del hy upon del y whole square. So based on this formula, you get the slope of this raster cell. So this method is utilized to calculate the slope at every cell value that is present. So that implies we are using the 8 neighborhood method here, where the 8 neighboring cells are utilized to calculate the slope at one position. So this is the step which is done easily in GIS, where it calculates the slope using this method. So if we have to calculate the slope for pixel H9, what would be del hx? Del hx would be, this was H4, 5, 6, 7. So del hx here would be H2 minus H6, and suppose the spatial resolution is in both direction A and A. So the formula here would be under root of H2 minus H6 whole square upon this direction del x, that is your 2a, plus del hy is H4 minus H8 whole square. Again the same, the vector length or the spatial resolution is same here for the y direction, again 2a. So based on these elevation values here, you can get the slope for any of the raster cells. That is how you calculate the slope. Now we will talk about how to calculate the aspect of the same raster cell. So the way we calculated the slope for the raster data, we can also calculate the aspect in the similar way. So for example, again we have that same raster here, and we again have here 9 cells, and this is the cell for which we need to calculate the aspect, and this represents 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8. So if we want to calculate the aspect for this cell, so how do we do that? Our simple formula for aspect is equal to arctan of, now we have to do for first that, remember the slope was tan inverse A upon B, so rise upon the base. So here we have arctan upon H3 minus, so H3 upon minus H7 upon H1 minus H5. So that is how you calculate the aspect in this map. Now if we look at what is the aspect representing or how much it varies, aspect actually varies between or is actually calculated in radians. So we need to convert these radians into degrees. How do we do that? We multiply the radians value with 57.129. So this radian value is calculated in the degrees. Once it's calculated in the degrees, we now need to find out the direction of aspect. The degree is not required only like what 63 degree represents or the 0 degree represents. So we have here 8 directions which represent our aspect. So if you will look, so this is your north which represents your 0 degree, this is your south, east and your west. These are your diagonals representing northeast, southeast, southwest and northwest. So how do you convert this radians value or the degree values into understanding whether the slope is in the north direction or the south direction? We first check what was the value in degrees. So if the value for degrees is in 0, that implies our aspect will be in the north direction. So we don't have to do anything for that. However, if our nx is not 0 or this value is not 0, then what happens? Now in the first equation we calculate the slope value. So if slope is less than or equal to 0, so that implies we first check slope is less than equal to 0. That is our first criteria. When it is less than and equal to 0, less than or greater than 0, not equal to 0. If it's less than or greater than 0, then after this we look at this slope direction. Now we calculated this and converted this d into 57.129. So you get the degrees of the slope or the slope in the degrees. Now how do we calculate the direction for this? Now suppose when in calculating this slope your nx is equal to 0. So if your nx is 0, we only look at the ny value. In ny value, if it is less than 0, then your aspect is equal to 180. So this is 0, aspect is your 180 in this direction. You get your aspect value here. Similarly, if it's not, ny is not less than 0, ny is greater than 0, then your aspect is 360 degree. So that is how you calculate your aspect in the form of degrees, and based on your degree values you can know the direction of your slope. So that is what we utilize in deriving our slope and aspect using the digital elevation model. Next we will be talking about how can it be used for profile curvature or plane curvature. So now when we talk about the plan or the profile curvatures, we are actually talking like in this figure. You can see the profile curvature is along the steep of the slope and your plan curvature is perpendicular to the slope direction. So the DEM model also helps us to evaluate these two features of a terrain or a relief feature. So profile curvature is actually telling you how much of the concavity or convexity is present in the slope gradient between the two raster cells. So this is an important aspect when you are calculating maybe the steepness of the slope, the runoff feature, whether it's too concave or it's too convex. So if you look at this raster cell, for the Z0 value, you need these 5 parameters, and on the basis of these 5 parameters or the 5 equations or the elevation values of all the 8 surrounding pixels, you can calculate the plan curvature using this equation and the profile curvature using this particular equation. So this is one of the important parameters which is utilized in discharge estimation also. Coming to other parameters which can be determined using the digital elevation model are here. Now digital elevation model has lot of points which can be derived from it. So one of the analysis which can be done on the digital elevation model is the analysis of the morphometric parameters. Now what are the morphometric parameters? Like the convergence index. It is based on the aspect of the raster cell, and this index is obtained by averaging of all the aspects of the slope directions of the adjacent cells. So you will notice, like the profile curvature, plan curvature, or even the development of aspect, all the neighboring cells play an important part in development of an index for a certain pixel. So here also we have an average of all these aspect values and we get a convergence index. So this is known as CI, and these are the various aspect directions which are shown in this figure. Now you will see how these directions or the average of in these directions is giving us a convergence index and what's its meaning. So in calculating the convergence index, we have 3 examples here. In the first example, on the basis of the aspect directions, the average aspect direction is, in this case, is 0 degrees. In this case, all are pointing out, so the average direction here comes out to be 180 and here 90. So this is the average aspect. Once you have the average aspect, your convergence index requires subtracting minus degree from that same index, from the aspect value. So subtracting from 0 degrees, we have an index of minus 90 in this case, and in this case we have an index of 90 degrees. So what does a minus value and a positive value tells us? A minus value tells us there is a convergent flow, there is a divergent flow, and a positive value is telling us there is a convergent flow happening. So you can actually understand the surface flow directions using the convergence index. Going from convergence index, we have other parameters which we will be discussing about now. Other than the convergence index, there are other morphometric parameters which can be utilized using the digital elevation model. One of them, other than this, is your topographic position index. What does the topographic position index tells you? Topographic position index, for imagine this is your raster data and you need to calculate the topographic index of this raster cell. You calculate the mean elevation of all these points and you have the elevation of this point. So the average value around this pixel tells you whether the point in consideration is at a higher elevation or is at a lower elevation in comparison to its neighboring cell. So it helps you in highlighting whether it's going to be a steeper, whether there would be a runoff or whether there would be an accumulation. Other than topographic index, you have other parameters also, and they are easily available in literature, and you can look at it and see what you want to derive and how you can derive them. Each of these parameters are also available in either of the softwares which are utilized for GIS, maybe the open source software like the QGIS or even in ArcGIS. Other than this, now let's talk about the errors in DEM. We know we can utilize DEM for so many parameter analysis and get a lot of stuff. We can have the visualization. However, sometimes the DEM values suffer from some errors. These errors are usually known as the sink values. What are the sink values? Now, because the DEM values have not been calculated at each and every grid cell, there are some interpolations involved. So sometimes this cell has a sink value. Sink value implies that all the neighboring values and other values may be at a very high elevation data, and one in between may be at a very low elevation, which in actuality might not be possible. So before we can analyze that DEM, we have to fill these sinks and then only we can utilize it. Otherwise, if like for in the topographic index, if you use it before filling, you will be getting lot of values where you would imagine that it's actually because there is a valley, but in reality there might not be a valley. So this is one of the major limitations in using the DEM. Another is your resolution. If the data to be utilized is for suppose calculation of the discharge data, then you need a very high resolution DEM data, which is due to costing and an expensiveness is usually not available. Then it can be a issue. If that data is available maybe in the form of your radar data or the LiDAR data, then it's a good estimation and it can be easily utilized for your method whichever you want to use. So that is here the end of it, and you will realize once you start using DEM that it can be used in various applications like in hydrological modeling, in landslide estimations, in erosion potential mapping, and many other applications of this are available. In the end, to summarize, in this module we learned about various different types of the digital elevation models that are available to us and which can be easily derived using the satellite data. These elevation models are of actually three types. One is your digital elevation model, which is your raster data. Your vector data is your triangulated irregular network method data, and the other was the digital surface model or DSM. In usual calculations or the decision making, usually the digital elevation model based on the raster data is utilized because it's easy to have mathematical calculations to be done on that in comparison to the triangulated irregular network. Secondly, you would also realize that the triangulated irregular network is a bit more complex as compared to the digital elevation model. However, both of these models can be interconverted into each other using the software. So it's not actually that difficult even if you have a TIN available. You can also convert the TIN to the digital elevation model. Also, there's a lot of literature available on this, and the reference text has been provided to you. I hope that is sufficient for you and you would go through the text for this. Thank you.